Deadly Blessing came out of a rewrite job that I'd done for a producer, Max Keller. And I should say his wife was also a producer, Micheline Keller. And they were great people, and they gave me the opportunity to do a television movie of the week based on their seeing The Hills Have Eyes. And at that time, when Hills came out, there were very few normal people who thought that was anything that any civilized person should look at. But they, in fact, when I walked into the production office after I was hired, because that was a different entity from Max and Mish's offices, I walked in literally at the time that the assistant production manager said, "Did you see that film, this Craven guy, he's supposed to be directing this, right? Did you see it? It's like horrible." And I said, "Hi, I'm Wes." So anyway, they were one of my earliest champions. And they, so we did A Stranger in Our House with Linda Blair, and that got good responses. And so Max had this script written by two young guys, and he said, "Do you want to take just a pass on this?" So I wrote several passes on it, and then Max took it out and got money for it. So that was the origin of it, and it wasn't like my original concept at all. But in my rewrites, I did emphasize the religious aspects. When I was a college teacher, the first year I taught was in New Wilmington, Pennsylvania, which is right in the middle of Amish country. So I had spent a year around that culture. And then, of course, I was raised as fundamentalist Baptist, so I knew that sort of insular life also of your religion teaching you literally that you're not part of the world, you're just passing through, which creates a tremendous sense of tension in those that are practicing that, especially the young people, because you are living in the world, hello, and it's in some ways it feels like a very destructive disconnect. So yeah, I put all of that struggles, it just sort of elevated it up to the level of a sect,
You need the fear of God in thee. Kneel.
Father.
Kneel!
Yeah, Stephen King called me a pornographer once of violence. He should talk. I've since met him, and there's no hard feelings. But yeah, there was, my first couple films, people really thought that I was deeply, deeply offensive and probably deeply, deeply depraved. I did a panel talk once in London with the head of the British censorship board, and there were like four of us at the table, and he leaned over and said, "But it's so perverted, why would you want to put that on film?" It's just, people used to literally keep their children away from me. People would get up and leave the table when they found out what film I had done, back in the days of Last House, for instance. So I think that was, in some ways, it was my way of just breaking totally free of the whole religious background and being a nice boy and not sinning and, just thinking nice thoughts and everything and just kind of sticking it in their faces. Deadly Blessing was interesting in several ways. There were two producers, John Peters and Peter Guber, who were wild and crazy guys in Hollywood at that time, and they were kind of the uber producers in this, above Max Keller and Mish Keller, and actually two other sets of producers. And they came to the set. One of the early days we were shooting in Waxahachie, Texas, out in the middle of a field. They came up in a rented car, sped onto the set, braked, got out. I think we were setting up a shot, and they said, "Get in the car." And they drove me out, just literally turned and drove out into the middle of the field, and stopped. And I thought, they're going to shoot me or fire me. I don't know what's coming. And they said, "We like what you're doing, keep doing it, but it needs a little bit more sex appeal. We got this girl. Her name's Sharon Stone. She was in Woody Allen's film. Did you see it? She was the girl in the train, that went by, and it's like, trains passing the night." I said, "Yeah, I saw her. She was beautiful." "Well, we're going to bring her out. She's going to be great." And the other thing is we want all the girls to be wearing lingerie a lot. This is my introduction to, producers and studios in the worst sense of the word. So looking at the picture, I recently did a commentary on it. It was like, this looks so bizarre with these young women wearing these sort of, 1940s vamp, lingeries in a farmhouse. But that was kind of how that came about.
Stop shouting. I'm up. I had this really awful nightmare. I dreamed about this man whose skin was all gray, like ash.
So Sharon Stone, she was, this was in the time when Sharon was saying she was almost Miss Pennsylvania and that she had an IQ of 184, which she since has admitted she doesn't. But she was very smart and very, very driven and focused on getting what she wanted, needed. And we had a scene where I wanted there to be a tarantula on her. A big barn sequence ends with her falling downstairs, and you think she's finally free of all the spiders that were up in the loft, and she looks down and there's a spider on her chest. And so we had a spider wrangler, and I brought Sharon to him, and I said, tarantulas actually aren't, they're not actually that poisonous. And she just looked at me like, yeah, right. So anyway, the shot called for a spider to be on her chest, which she didn't look happy about that at all. So we went to the spider wrangler, and he said the only way the spider would bite you, because they don't bite people, is if you were to slap it down hard and you made the fangs go into your flesh, then, but it'd be like a bee sting, it wouldn't be bad. And she says, there's nothing you can do about the fangs? And he said, well, we could clip them with fingernail clippers, but the spider would never grow them back, so it is just slowly starved to death, so it would be a horrible death. And she just looked at him and said, clip them. It was one of the coldest things I've ever heard. And then she turned to me and said, put them on you. So I had to put the spider on me, which at that time I was really phobic about spiders. It was one of the things I really just was scared of. And so I had to have the guy put the spider all over me. And it was interesting because as soon as at first it went on my arm, it was like walking up. It was so light and dainty, almost like air, that all fear went out of my body. So that was kind of an interesting little sidelight to that. But Sharon was, she worked very hard. She had a coach there that was coaching her and kind of always fighting the coach about, that's not the performance I'd like her to do it this way. But she, she did a credible job, I think, and obviously went on to huge things.
Hey, would you like this on toast? No. Oh!
Well, I think it's a beautiful film. I think it was beautifully shot. It was shot in a beautiful location. And I think there's some really good sequences in it. So in that sense, I think it's worth a watch. I mean, the lingerie craziness of all that and some of the story points and so forth were a little clunky. So I certainly don't think it's one of my best works, but it's always amazed me that it's almost unknown. I think now that it's coming out on DVD, it'll get a wider viewing audience, but it came out on VHS and then kind of just disappeared for many, many years. Yes, the ending was another John Peters, Peter Guber thing of they wanted to have a big jump, and it was, I think, around the time of Carrie, and that sort of, you have to have a jump ending at the very, very last thing. So we devised this idea of the devil actually appearing and coming up through the floor. And if I had been in a stronger position, that being one of my first feature films ever, I would have just said no, but because I don't think it worked particularly well. Some people thought it was kind of fun, but I think quite often the big, giant Carrie ending, it's just become a cliche. What I'm got in the future, I've taken a year off. My wife and I were building a house, and I also had a complete knee replacement. I don't know whether this has been made public, but that takes a year to recover from, really. So that was pretty big. I've been writing with Steve Niles, who's a comic book writer. He wrote 30 Days a Night, among other things. And it's based on a concept of 5 comic books that would kind of make a graphic novel and possibly a movie. And it's a road picture between 3 young people, one of whom is a werewolf, one is a vampire, and one is a zombie. The girl's the zombie. And they're kind of thrown together, and in order to survive, they have to be on the run on the road in a beat-up Bentley that the vampire kid stole. And the vampire kid doesn't know that he's a vampire, and it's the time of his life where it's coming on to him, and he doesn't know what's going on. The other 2 are trying to help him at the same time. They're trying to run from the police and everything else. So it's kind of a fun romp.